What's going on, you guys? It's your boy Patrick, aka Addicted to Combat, back for another week of UFC action, and we finally have UFC 285 this Saturday, featuring two championships on the line: the Women's Flyweight Championship in the co-main event between Shevchenko and Alexa Grasso, and in the main event, we finally have the long-awaited return of the greatest of all time, Jon Jones, moving up a weight class after 3 years out of the game to take on Gane, the number one ranked heavyweight, for that vacant championship. 14 fights on this card in total. Fun fights from top to bottom. Even the debuting fighters in this card on the prelims are all highly touted prospects. And on the main card, we've got Nickal making his official UFC debut. So a lot of fun action, some good betting spots I found, and I will point out. But a lot of fights to get through on this card. I'll try to be brief on this video, but I will be back on Tuesday at 9:30 p.m. Central Time with my guy Dale from the Punch List MMA podcast. And on Wednesday, I'll be going live again on this channel, co-hosting my pay-per-view week panel with the Couch Warrior podcast. We'll be having Ben the Bane Davis and Uncle Weezy join us to talk about these fights in greater detail and from a betting perspective on Wednesday night at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. So check that out. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and let's break into the first prelim of the night. First fight of the night at lightweight between two debuting fighters. We've got Radzhabov taking on Esteban Ribovics. And Ribovics we just saw in August on the Contender Series, scoring a vicious round one knockout for his contract. Ribovics is a freestyle fighter out of Argentina, and he's 11 wins, 0 losses as a pro, all stoppages. So not being to the scorecards is a bit of a red flag, but at least it's very impressive when you look at the fights. 6 knockouts and 5 submissions, so a little bit of variety in the skill set there. Only 26 years old for Ribovics, and he carries all of that young man's confidence, knowing he's never been beaten before, knowing he's put all of his opponents out inside the distance. He rushes forward and plays the bully, fast starter, throws in combination. A lot of them are really short hooks, uppercuts, overhands, things like that, but he can throw kicks pretty well and successfully. It's really that 2-3 counter that does very well. He throws that rear cross, comes back with a vicious, turns the hips through that hook, and he can put people away. So another gripe I have is he is out of the Argentinian regional scene, making his way through promotions like the Samurai Fight House that I always make fun of. But either way, whether the competition level is low in those promotions, he is putting these people away, clearly showing that he's got death touch in his hands at 155. Some of these people are going to sleep after just one strike. So he's always wound up, always tight and ready to throw with fight-ending intention, and that can be a little bit tiring too if you're going to have the octagon jitters and you're very coiled up and you're not loose. That does worry me, especially with him not going to the scorecards, but so far he looks pretty durable. He's taken on Radzhabov, who is on short notice, and this Tajik fighter actually was supposed to be on the next season of The Ultimate Fighter. Now he's getting a direct contract to the UFC on short notice, and it seems more appropriate because Radzhabov is not a green regional level fighter. He's had 9 fights in the PFL, making it to the finale at lightweight on 2 different occasions, in 2019 against Natan Schultz and in 2021 against Raush Manfio. He came up close in both of those competitive decisions, but ultimately decisively losing both of those bouts. But he has been to those 5-round decisions a few times in his career. He's a very good wrestler by trade, not always the fastest to try to take the fight to the mat. He does feel comfortable striking at distance, going strike for a while. He's got pretty good hand speed, decent power. He can be hittable, though, and that does worry me against Ribovics here. But overall, we just saw his most recent fight a year and some change ago against, I believe it was Zach Zane in the Eagle FC. He scored a quick, easy guillotine win in round 1. You know, obviously bullying the guy around, showing his good grappling skills and strength in the clinch. So with a 16-4 and 1 draw record, a lot more experience, the stronger wrestling skill set, and a better level of competition so far, I am going to take Radzhabov to win here. I think he does get it done inside the distance as well. He's a minus 240 on the money line right now. These lines just dropped earlier today, I believe, plus 205 for Ribovics. Not something I want to bet or get behind on either guy here. I'm pretty sure that the skill set of Radzhabov should get the job done, probably by submission in this fight, once Ribovics overswings, gets taken down, and tires out. But, yeah, you can't deny the power of Ribovics, and if Radzhabov is as hittable as he's looked in certain fights, Ribovics could actually get this upset. But I like the fight doesn't go to decision, or maybe the inside the distance props for Radzhabov here. So that's my take, but no bet so far. Up next at bantamweight, we've got Basharat making his debut against the returning Blackshear, who is making his second walk to the UFC. Basharat is very exciting, a 9-0 professional Afghani fighter who's got really good striking and good wrestling as well. His brother Javid Basharat fights very similarly and is already in the UFC after being successful on the Dana White Contender Series himself. He's now 3-0, so we're going to see if Farid, the younger 25-year-old here, can replicate that and also stay undefeated, because these brothers are a force to be reckoned with now. 9-0 with 1 knockout, 5 subs, and 3 decision victories for Farid Basharat, who just came off of that dominant decision win on the Contender Series against Alan Bagoso, who is a very explosive, dangerous guy with good experience. Farid was able to spend the first couple of minutes of round 1 establishing that range, reading his opponent, and then he slowly ramped up the striking output. He got very comfortable with jumping knees, spinning attacks, and then as you are preparing for all those blitzing combinations coming your way, he'll switch to a heavy grappling game plan and start taking you down and threatening with submissions. So they've just got a very good ability to switch up the game and exploit the weaknesses of their opponents, both Farid and his brother Javid, who fight very similarly. Blackshear is only 28 years old, so not that much older. He came off of that short notice debut against Yusuf Zalal back in August. And unfortunately, it was not a total loss. I mean, it was a majority draw in that bout, but it wasn't the type of draw where, like, Blackshear finished strong. He actually finished worse than he started. It was a lot of grappling exchanges back and forth. They kept on taking each other's back, getting into weird scrambles where not one guy really had a dominant round against the other for the first 2 rounds. But the 2 judges scored it for Blackshear, and then in round 3, Yusuf Zalal switched to a striking game plan and destroyed Blackshear, outpaced him cardio-wise, and almost finished the fight. If there was a few more seconds on the end of that round in round 3, Blackshear would have been TKO'd. So it was more of it felt more like a loss than it did a draw for Blackshear in that bout. He is the former CFFC bantamweight champion, a kickboxer with a black belt in BJJ. So he's got a well-rounded skill set. He's explosive with his movements, not the best defense, striking, or takedown defense, which is where he struggles. So Blackshear is often very submission over position. He winds up in trouble the way that we saw against Yusuf Zalal. And he has fought in the CES. I mentioned the CFFC where he was champion. So he's got, a 12-4-1 draw record. Not the worst competition level. He's UFC ready, I would say. But this is just a very tough matchup. He finds himself a plus 350 underdog. Farid's the minus 500 favorite here. And I kind of agree with that line. Like I said, any weakness Farid can capitalize on. I think he's the better striker, the more powerful striker, faster man, and way, way better grappling. So give me Farid Basharat. I think he gets this done inside the distance here. That would be how I would play this. Would be either the fight doesn't go or Farid Basharat, one of his finishing props. So, yeah, I think Farid does manage to go 10-0 and join his brother in the UFC undefeated still. Women's strawweight bout up next between Tabitha Ricci and Jessica Penne. This was on a fight night card sometime last year, I believe, but it fell off, and now it's rescheduled for UFC 285. And both women have actually had a birthday since then as well. So we're now looking at a 28-year-old, 7-1 professional in Tabitha Ricci, taking on the 40-year-old at this point, Jessica Penne, who, as you would expect, the ripe old age of 40, she has a lot more experience as a pro with a 14-6 record, 8 submissions among those 14 wins. Both women here are grapplers. They're both BJJ black belts, but Tabitha Ricci actually combines that with a judo black belt as well, and she has the ability to get the fight to the mat and then work her submission game once it's there, or just rain down ground and pound and hold control time. She's very good at doing that. Always going to be the undersized fighter in most bouts. She is 5'1" with a short reach, so Jessica Penne is going to have some reach, about 4 inches of height on her. But Ricci has been very good at adapting to that size discrepancy she always has, blitzing in range with aggression, very good combinations on her way in, and then she'll just bully her opponents against the cage and look for the hip toss and get them to the mat. So that'll probably be a very good strategy against Jessica Penne. The worry with Penne is that she has been taken down by a good takedown artist like Lupi Godinez and managed to capitalize on some key transitions, some scrambles, and end up on top position for enough time to win that split decision over Lupi Godinez. A decision that probably should not have gone her way, but it's possible. So that's a worry for Tabitha Ricci here, especially when you consider that back when this was scheduled for the fall, it was like minus 185 for Tabitha Ricci, moved all the way up to minus 215 or so. Now she's all the way up to minus 275 at this point in the week early. So whenever that happens and the bookies learn where the money went, they always reopen the line at a worse price for us. So we're getting less value. I don't know what to do from a betting perspective here. But I like Tabitha Ricci's striking. I like her takedown offense. And I think she's going to be safe enough with her jiu-jitsu credentials to not get submitted from like the dangerous guard of Jessica Penne. So I'm looking at striking, aggression, takedown offense, cardio, youth, all goes in the favor of Tabitha Ricci. So I'm going to take her to win this fight by decision and probably a pass betting-wise. Moving back down to bantamweight for this next matchup between Mana Martinez and Cameron Saaiman. Both of these guys are young and improving strikers. It should be a fun matchup. And Cameron Saaiman, I think we just saw this guy make his debut not but a couple months ago in December. I think it might have been UFC 282 on that pay-per-view. We saw him take on a short notice replacement, an undefeated grappler from the regional scene named Steven Kozlow, who I don't think was very good, but Kozlow made it very interesting early, getting the takedowns he needed, got the submission attempts he wanted to get, and had his shot to pull off the upset. But Cameron Saaiman showed pretty good resolve, submission defense, and more importantly, better conditioning as the fight went on. So Saaiman, once again, he had some adversity. He landed a blatant illegal knee and got a point taken away. Really had to rally in round 3 to make sure that he won that fight. And he managed to get that round 3 TKO stoppage with some good knees in the clinch and some punches up close to put Steven Kozlow away, who was really fatigued. Cameron Saaiman, only 22 years old, 7-0 record. He did have his first 5 pro bouts, I think all of them in the South African promotion in the EFC, where main card fighter Dricus DuPlessis is also from. Saaiman got a round 3 TKO stoppage on the Contender Series as well last season. So it's cool to see his power not only translate to 135, but translate late into a fight as well. It shows very good conditioning, and his technique is solid. I would say the thing that we're seeing so far from him is not only is he a little bit untested, his durability is a little untested, and I would say his takedown defense looks like it can be exploited a little bit there. But he's been technically sound so far on the mat with the submission defense. Obviously, he's undefeated. Mana Martinez, a striker, 26 years old still at this point. He is 10-3 as a pro. He's got massive power in his hands. In fact, the fighter we were supposed to see in the prelims last week, Jose Johnson, who's a killer with the Muay Thai, Mana Martinez handled that guy, put him out cold with a lead left hook in like 30 seconds back in a regional promotion. I forget which one it was, but yeah, I mean, the guy can slip and rip. He can, use very good head movement to circle and turn his hips into a counter shot. I like him a lot. His leg kicks are good. His front kicks to the body are very good. And he's got surprising power at 135. So the more fight-ending ability comes from Mana Martinez. I'd say the better striking technique, the output, and just like doing things textbook comes from the side of Cameron Saaiman. But both are young. Both could look drastically different from just fight to fight. Now, looking at this fight from a gambling perspective and where the money line is at, I am surprised that Cameron Saaiman's a minus 285 to minus 300 favorite over Mana Martinez at this point, when Cameron Saaiman was about that same money line, maybe even a little less against Steven Kozlow last time he fought. And we can agree that Steven Kozlow is not UFC caliber. The guy came in on short notice with a limited skill set and still managed to give Cameron Saaiman an issue in that round 1. So why would Cameron Saaiman now be a bigger favorite over a guy in Mana Martinez who's got the same amount of youth? He's a very fast striker, probably the more dangerous fight ender. A good explosive techniques like Superman punches, spinning back fists, and you'll see him use his own wrestling. He's no slouch on the ground with submission offense as well. So there's a lot to like about Martinez, and I've seen him display very good resolve and recoverability. You saw that crazy fight back and forth with Ronnie Lawrence where Mana Martinez had to keep on getting up and defending takedowns. He got knocked down a couple of times only to get back up and knock down Ronnie Lawrence. So there's a lot to like about that kind of resolve and grit and will to win in a fight. Even in Martinez's unfortunate loss in the Contender Series to Draco Rodriguez, he got wrapped up in a triangle, but did not quit, did not tap out. He picked up Draco Rodriguez, tried to slam him, ultimately falling asleep in that position. So, yeah, I mean, there's just a lot to like about Martinez. And at plus 250, I got to put down a bet on him. I'm not sure if it's going to be 3/4 of a unit or a full unit, but I'll see where this money line goes, and maybe we get more than plus 250, but I'm ready to lock in that bet right now. I think there's a lot of value on that side of things. So give me Mana Martinez to just get the better damaging strikes, maybe land some takedown offense of himself, and just ultimately just land the better damaging strikes over 3 rounds to win a decision here. Welterweight bout up next between Ian Garry and Song Kenan. This is a striker versus striker matchup primarily between the 10-0 undefeated professional and Ian Garry. The young Irishman is only 25 years old and 6'3". He's massive for this weight class. Song Kenan, not the smallest welterweight either. He's 6 foot tall for the Chinese 170-pounder here. And we haven't seen Song Kenan since, I think, like March of 2021. So almost 2 years since he was put out brutally by knockout in round 1 by Max Payne Griffin, which it's kind of weird to say, right? Because Max Griffin doesn't knock out hardly anybody. I think that was his second UFC knockout ever out of a long career. So Song Kenan, he does have a lot of finishes on his record out of 19 wins, 9 knockouts, 8 submissions. But the guy's not very good. He just mainly has power in his right hand. Some okay counters and combinations, but I think Song Kenan was one of these Chinese guys that was signed when the UFC was breaking into that Asian market and doing a lot of international cards. This guy was on mostly those cards. And the 3 knockouts he scored out of his 4 UFC wins were all over guys who are no longer in the UFC and haven't been for some time. The wrestler Bobby Nash, who got knocked out, I think, 3 times, including Song Kenan. A knockout over Hector Aldana, who also went 0-3 in the UFC and got cut. And he had a knockout over Caitlin Potter, who I think went 1-2 in the UFC and then retired after Song Kenan knocked him out. So not the best competition that he's beaten. The wins have not aged extremely well. And, he has been in some exciting fights. Like, he was in an exciting fight against Alex Morono on a Chinese card, but Alex Morono decisively outstruck him pillar to post and looked like Max Holloway in the process. So I really do think that the money line at minus 650 for Ian Garry, I mean, it kind of makes sense at this point for a 10-0 prospect who's going to be younger, bigger, faster, more technical, more powerful, you know what I mean? So, and he's beaten the better competition. So, there's a lot to like about Ian Garry. Now, his defense can be a little bit questionable. You can see him pulling back his head high up in the air in a straight line, but that's part of the magic with Ian Garry. He baits people into thinking that he's just 1 inch away from being knocked out, and then he gets off the center line and snipes you with that rear cross and puts you out just like he did Jordan Williams. So he also has a judo background, the ability to get some takedowns, and he's got pretty good balance with that wide base he strikes with. So Song Kenan, I think, has a puncher's chance here, and that's about it. So that gets you a plus 475 underdog price tag. So I would be pretty confident in saying that Garry gets this done inside the distance, probably a round 1 knockout. So I look for fight doesn't go, the unders, the inside the distance props for Ian Garry. And I would look for those to try to chop down that minus 650, but I'm pretty confident in Garry, one of the more confident picks on the card. We have a fun middleweight bout up next between Julian Marquez and Marc-Andre Barriault, 2 guys that put on entertaining scraps at the weight class, and there's some things to like and not like about both of their skill sets. The dislikes right off the bat, they're both coming off of losses, so that's a pretty simply put one. Marquez coming off of that round 1 beatdown at the hands of RoboCop Rodriguez early last summer. He got beat from pillar to post in that round 1 knockout loss and got KO'd badly. And that was the first time Marquez has ever been finished by strikes or submission in his career. Notoriously durable. Same can be said for Marc-Andre Barriault, who got knocked out in round 1 by Chidi Njokuani not that long ago as well. So both guys, their durability has been cracked at least once, but overall, you can usually count on them to sustain damage and keep moving forward, especially Marc-Andre Barriault, who not only has that durability, but the cardio and the pace as well, and that's lacking from the game of Marquez, who is powerful early. He's a potent finisher with a 100% finish rate, 9 wins, 6 knockouts, and 3 submissions, and those 3 subs make up all of his UFC wins. He's not opposed to grabbing onto a neck after he's hurt you. But, the wild striking, the big overhands, the looping hooks up close, the high kicks, that really goes out the window after round 1 or pushing a pace after the 1.5 round mark. So he starts having to load up, everything's telegraphed, and just doesn't have a whole lot of power onto it. Unless his opponent gasses out equally, kind of like a Maki Pitolo, where he can get that round 3 anaconda on him. He also has submission wins over Sam Alvey and Darren Stewart as well. So none of these people are in the UFC anymore, so those wins have not aged very well. I think his last knockout win was over Phil Hawes on the Contender Series by head kick. So also Marquez's takedown defense is super weak. That falls apart even weaker when he's tired. So that's going to happen here. Marc-Andre can put on a big pace, forward pressure, and aggression. He can be hit, especially early, but generally his pull counters are pretty good. He can use his durability to make sure he lands 3 when his opponents only land 1 or 2 on him. So I like Marc-Andre in this spot quite a bit. He's a slight favorite at like minus 140 to minus 150. And I took him at minus 125, I believe is the price tag over the weekend. But plus 135, the underdog price on Julian Marquez. Yeah, I mean, I would probably take Marquez inside the distance if you thought he had a shot here. But either way, I mean, the durability of both guys is something to consider for this going over. But more often than not, I think Marquez's cardio is going to fail him here. And give me Marc-Andre Barriault to get some good top pressure, some ground and pound, and start landing those takedowns as they get easier when the fight goes on. Women's flyweight bout up next between Viviane Araujo and Amanda Ribas. It's a very fun matchup to break down and analyze because I think it's very close, and both women have very good skill sets and a similar record. You're looking at 11 wins, 4 losses for Araujo, and Amanda Ribas is 10-3. So very close. Moneyline reflects that. Plus 100, slight underdog price tag for Araujo. Minus 120, the slight favorite, Amanda Ribas, who is the younger woman by 7 years at 29 years old. That's going for her. Both women are very good at BJJ as well. That was Araujo's first martial art. She's a black belt, as is Amanda Ribas, who also has a judo background as well. Araujo has got the better technical striking, though. That's just really going to be her main advantage in this fight. She's coming off of that 5-round headlining fight night loss to Alexa Grasso, who's now fighting for a title. It was a competitive matchup, not a very close one. You know, Araujo is looking to stalk and have the better counters, the more eye-catching shots, and also look for the takedowns herself. But Alexa Grasso, just too slick of a boxer, too fast, and was able to cut angles and do the better minute winning. Amanda Ribas, however, is a work in progress on the feet. You know, you always hear the commentators talk about how enhanced and how improved her striking looks. She's still extremely hittable, and she's coming off of that split decision loss to Caitlin Chookagian, a much superior striker, and I think Chookagian clearly won that fight. You know, she boxed her up, she jabbed her face off, landed the better rear crosses as well, and you know, Amanda Ribas just didn't do enough with getting the fight to the mat to counteract all of the damaging strikes on the feet. But yeah, Amanda Ribas, she's got those judo throws. They are very slick. Viviane Araujo has had very good takedown defense over a lot of grapplers. Alexa Davis, Roxanne Modafferi, Montana De La Rosa. These are all women that struggled to get Araujo to the mat. Araujo is very fast, strong, athletic, and even at 36, that didn't seem to be going away in her last bout. I think it was in October of last year. So she averages herself about 2 takedowns every 15 minutes in her UFC career. That's over a decent sample size of opponents as well. So, you know, I got to say, I'm going to take Araujo here. I'm actually going to bet her as an underdog price. I got her at plus 104. The age does worry me a bit, you know, her being 36, really pushing that upper limit of what you want to be backing at flyweight. But I just think she's still athletic and fast, and she's going to jab and just jab off the face of Amanda Ribas, measure up that nice rear cross, get some hooks in there, maybe some kicks. And I think she could even end up on top position if Ribas tries to hip toss her. The scramble ability is pretty good for Araujo. So Amanda Ribas would have to have the perfect fight, try to crash the pocket with her sloppy striking, clinch up, and really just have the perfect fight of getting the fight to the mat and controlling position there for the majority of 2 rounds. I just don't see it happening. So give me Araujo as the underdog pick here. Middleweight bout up next between Derek Brunson and Dricus DuPlessis. One of these young versus old matchups that Derek Brunson tends to find himself in a lot these days, always playing the gatekeeper at middleweight. Brunson's 39 at this point, and he's taken on a 10-year younger man, the 29-year-old South African savage Dricus DuPlessis, who's 18-2 as a pro and has finished 17 of those 18 wins, 7 knockouts, 10 submissions for Dricus, the kickboxer with fight-ending power and slick grappling as well. I will say here he did get a submission victory over Darren Till in his last fight. That was largely due to fatigue, I would say. He outpaced Darren Till and beat him up so badly in the first 2 rounds, almost getting him out of there in round 1 very quickly. And DuPlessis almost emptied his gas tank in round 1, throwing, I think, like 70 strikes that were unanswered and burning out his gas tank. But he showed he's got a second wind. And he also showed us that last summer over Brad Tavares, who took Dricus to his first decision win. And Dricus showed that he can look tired, he can be mouth-breathing, but he's going to throw over triple-digit significant strikes and still make it to the bell. So I will say, Dricus does fight in bursts. He can be a little bit sloppy and reckless and just try to hit the target by any means necessary. But what I don't like is sometimes he instinctually will go for the grappling that he's been good at in the past. Like I said, 10 submissions. He does dive on necks. He will bully you in the clinch and things like that. You don't want to play that game against Derek Brunson. He would love to play the range game against Derek Brunson, try to touch Brunson's suspect chin in his old age and not get in close and get body lock trip takedowned or get his leg grabbed and thrown to the mat, because that's where Derek Brunson's been winning all of his bouts in the past few years. You know, Brunson used to be a finisher with the striking mostly. Now his chin is a little bit suspect, and he's been facing elite striker after elite striker where that's their main path to victory. So he's been smart not to fight at their game plan. Guys like Jared Cannonier last year in February that he lost to after having early success. Guys like, who else? Edmund Shabazian, Darren Till, all of these guys, Ian Heinisch even, all of these past victories for Derek Brunson have been against guys that have that striking acumen, so he's just been taking him down. And it's been a fun ride backing Derek Brunson as a dog, getting that over plus 300 decision prop on him over Kevin Holland was easy money, scoring that plus 270 underdog ticket on him over Edmund Shabazian. But again, he's a strong collegiate wrestler, but these are some easy guys to take and hold down that you can outpace. Guys like Darren Till, guys like, who else did I mention? Kevin Holland, of course, who had like a mental breakdown in that fight, and Edmund Shabazian, who gasses out. So some of these are just easier matchups to wrestle these people. I think that'll be harder against DuPlessis, who's very big, very strong, and just like a real slippery guy with a very awkward movement. So I think DuPlessis will win this fight by round 2 TKO. His money line is like minus 205, plus 175 on Brunson. Brunson is certainly a live dog. This guy's got crazy experience and a good skill set, but his chin seems to be suspect. His cardio doesn't seem to be holding up that well anymore. But I agree with this money line, and since I would probably line this where it's at, minus 200 Dricus. So I can't bet that because I'm not getting an edge over the bookies. Now, if I think it should be lined minus 200 for Dricus and it's at minus 170, now we're talking. Now I got to bet. I have an edge, but I'll probably have to pass on this one. If I played anything, it would be Dricus inside the distance. The fight doesn't go to decision. Because, if Derek Brunson does have success and can ground Dricus, he can probably smother him and maybe get a submission somewhere down the stretch. But most worlds, I think Dricus will land with that awkward but powerful striking, those good pull counters, and knock out Brunson here. So give me the younger man by 10 years, the potent finisher, DuPlessis. Super interesting bantamweight bout to headline our prelim card. We've got Cody Garbrandt taking on Trevin 5-Star Jones in what is one of the biggest step-downs in competition you'll ever see, because Cody Garbrandt went 11-0 professionally to defeat one of the best bantamweights to ever do it in Dominic Cruz. And at that time, he did it in the unthinkable way of beating him by a 5-round decision, where everybody really thought he'd have to knock him out early to win that fight. Now he's taking on Trevin 5-Star Jones after losing 5 of Garbrandt's last 6. Trevin Jones also on a 3-fight losing streak, but Jones is losing these fights to guys making their debut in the UFC. Guys like Saidikab Kakramanov, guys like Javid Basharat. Good fighters, don't get me wrong, but still, nobody that's even touching that ranked opponent level. So you've got this narrative that Cody Garbrandt's chin is destroyed, his durability is shot. At this point, at 31 years old, he's just done, and he can barely take the lightest of jabs. I'm not sure how much I agree with that theory. I understand that the results are there to sort of prove it on paper. He's lost 5 of his last 6 for Garbrandt, and 4 of those 5 have been knockouts. And I can't forgive that botched weight cut down to 125. He looked horrible, and he did get dropped like 3 times. But Kai Kara-France is incredibly skilled, very, very fast, and, he's a finisher. So not too much of a surprise there. But think about it this way. I think Cody Garbrandt just got extremely far in the sport the way that he did with a limited skill set. Not that he wasn't talented, but he just chose to brawl, fall in love with his power. And he was one of those first guys at these lighter weight classes to show that, look, these little guys can have knockout, lights-out power. Even when Garbrandt fought Thomas Almeida, when Thomas Almeida was like a 21-0 undefeated Brazilian savage, very technical, well-rounded, and Garbrandt went in there and just slugged it out with him and came out the victor. So I think he got rewarded for winging those hooks and almost fighting like what Trevor Peek looks like now at middleweight. But at lightweight, it looks a little bit more technical because it's faster and he's got a little bit better footwork. But he had that awesome masterclass performance over Dominic Cruz. Just had that awesome night where he just peaked. But after that, he's lost to Dillashaw from trying to slug it out with him. Dillashaw again trying to slug it out with him. Pedro Munoz trying to get in a firefight with him. Now, sometimes it works out, Rafael Assunção, he was able to, brawl and actually land a perfect punch on him. But then the narrative against Rob Font was that Rob Font had too much volume. He was going to have a lot of chances to knock out Cody Garbrandt's compromised chin. I went contrarian a couple years ago on that and got a plus 450 decision prop on Rob Font by decision because I kind of thought that Cody Garbrandt would, try to clean things up a little bit. I don't think his chin was that compromised. But what happens when he tries to be technical? Now he's hesitant and he's gun shy. So even against Trevin Jones, who is very good at counter-striking off of his back foot, certainly has a chance to knock out Garbrandt if his chin is compromised. But I think that even a hesitant, gun-shy Cody Garbrandt at this point can still land more points on the board, still win more minutes over Trevin Jones. And at minus 170, it's not something I want to back with my money just because he's lost so many fights in a row, but I'm not on the Trevin Jones side either. I don't think that's a slam dunk. So give me Garbrandt, and I actually think he does win this fight by decision, oddly enough. I think he can best Trevin Jones, and then, maybe people will then think, oh, Garbrandt's back again. He's going to go back and be something at 135. I would imagine he then gets knocked out in any other step up in competition. But for now, I think he beats Trevin Jones, and I think he does it by decision. Kicking off the pay-per-view main card, we have a middleweight bout with the long-awaited debut of Bo Nickal as he takes on Jamie Pickett, one of the biggest betting favorites in the UFC in recent history. We've got minus 1,800 for Bo Nickal, plus 750 for Jamie Pickett. And Jamie Pickett's got all of the experience in mixed martial arts here, 13 wins and 8 losses, but he is one of the worst fighters on the roster, especially at middleweight, where he's gone 2-4 in the UFC. And he's got all of the physical gifts at middleweight, so he's really got no excuse. He's 6'1" with an 80-inch reach, only 34 years old. Looks like he should have, fight-ending power. Looks like he should be able to maintain range well, but his takedown defense is not great. His durability is not great. And it's bad when you're Jamie Pickett and you are basically the shining moment in the career of Jordan Wright. Jordan Wright was cut after going on, like a 4 or 5 loss streak. His last win was over Jamie Pickett, where he knocked him out in round 1. So usually Pickett, oddly enough, is using his wrestling to actually win minutes in the cage in the UFC, whether it's wrestling on the cage or getting takedowns in space and wearing on his opponents. That's not going to be on the table here against Bo Nickal. Bo Nickal is 27 years old, pretty big for this weight class at 6'1" and a long reach, and a world champion in freestyle wrestling, like Olympic quality wrestler, D1 wrestler, and I think he went in his career in D1 like 120 in wins, 3 losses, something crazy like that. So one of the best athletes of any sport, pound for pound, in the country at this point. And that's why he's getting a main event spot here. So I see people complaining about him being only 3-0 in MMA and being on the main card. I mean, that's what happens. I mean, people that are dominant in other sports just get that rub. I remember Brock Lesnar was the co-main event in his second mixed martial arts fight in his debut. So, things like that happen, especially when you're trying to sell pay-per-views to a very popular athlete that want to see him fight. But yeah, 3-0 for Bo Nickal. He knocked out his first opponent in like 30 seconds. He had 2 submissions that lasted less than a minute apiece on the Contender Series. One against an absolute can that he took down in 5 seconds and then guillotined. And then his most recent one was against CFFC middleweight champion, I believe, for whatever that's worth, Donovan Beard, who was a little bit more well-rounded and experienced, but he still got club and subbed by a triangle choke and a big left overhand early in that fight, like a minute in. So, you've got Bo Nickal, who's got unbelievable athleticism, power, strength, cardio, I'm sure, and just that takedown ability. He just shoots for the takedown faster than you can blink. And now he's coupling that with a grappling career as well, doing the grappling matches, training in BJJ. I think he's like a purple belt at this point, and you can see it paying off. He is making leaps and bounds quickly, and he should be able to wrap up a submission for Jamie Pickett here. I mean, I expect a very quick round one club and sub. He either knocks Jamie Pickett down or just throws him on his butt with a takedown and then just climbs all over his back and chokes him out. It shouldn't take very long. I don't know how you're going to play this from a betting perspective efficiently, though. You're not going to play the minus 1,800. That's not even worth parlaying. Like at those odds, you're basically, there's a good enough chance that Bo Nickal just like twists his ankle and loses. But yeah, I mean, you could look at like the round one prop. You could look at inside the distance, which I'm sure will still be like minus 1,000 for Bo Nickal. Maybe the round one sub if you find like a book early that has that close to something playable. I'm not even sure. I'm sure all the props are going to have no value on them at all. But the pick is Bo Nickal pretty easily. Round one submission. Lightweight bout up next between Jalen Turner and Mateusz Gamrot. This is a short notice matchup of about a month. Jalen Turner's original opponent, Dan Hooker, who I think would have been a better matchup for him because, a fellow striker that maybe Turner could mix up some grappling on. That would have been a better way to get his toes wet in this bigger name value talent pool than Mateusz Gamrot, who's a Polish international champion in submission wrestling. He's got 21 wins, only 2 losses, never been finished before. And he's a decent-sized lightweight, this Gamrot. He's 5'10", a 71-inch reach, and still in his prime at 32. But Jalen Turner is just a huge bully at 155, 6'3", big measurables. He looks kind of like who we'll see in the main event. It looks like John Jones, how he lorded over the 205ers. Is kind of the way that proportionally Turner looks against fellow 155ers. So incredibly well-rounded for Jalen Turner as well. At 27 years old, this guy's making rapid improvements, and 9 knockouts and 4 submissions make up his 13 wins. So 100% finish rate for Jalen Turner. Very slick submissions. He's got a good guillotine he can jump and then mount with. And he just came off of that club and sub via guillotine in like 40 seconds over Brad Riddell last year. Over the summer, I think it was I think he hit him with something big on the feet. Like I think he hit him with a punch. You got the panic shot from Brad Riddell, and then Jalen Turner just quickly sunk in that guillotine and got that victory. So his striking is so clean. He's so patient, stalks down his opponents, can really keep his feet planted, and just knowing that he can just throw kicks and jabs and keep them at the end of his long strikes at 155. He can really be patient and methodical about like what he throws and when, never wasting much energy and being very accurate. Now, Mateusz Gamrot's going to be the much better mover, better in and out movement. He's constantly, dropping down for the level change, really just grabbing at your ankles to make you think, and then he'll reshoot for real. Just a lot of really crafty tricks, and I think he will be successful in getting Jalen Turner down to the mat. And not only that, but he's got such good submission wrestling experience that he should be good at being safe and not getting his neck snatched up by a guillotine, not getting caught up in a triangle. He should be very good at, maintaining dominant position, advancing positions even, and keeping that smothering top pressure. So I like Gamrot in this spot quite a bit. I even think the striking is going to be good enough in the favor of Gamrot to win minutes there as well. He's just the speed and just the threat of the takedown is going to stifle that striking output from Jalen Turner. Now, plus 180 for Jalen Turner, minus 210 for Mateusz Gamrot. Not where it's at currently, not the best, I would say, especially on short notice for Gamrot. But like I said, I think that is just as much of a detriment to Jalen Turner on short notice, not knowing he's going to have this really advanced wrestler across the octagon from him on Saturday. I got minus 175 on Mateusz Gamrot. I put a couple of units on that. I'm pretty confident. Even where the money line is at now at minus 210, I don't mind that so much. The guy's been durable. He has never been finished. And I think he can actually win a decision here, taking Jalen Turner to his 3rd decision loss. Moving up to welterweight, we've got a pretty simple breakdown up next, I think, between Shavkat Rakhmonov and Jeff Neal. You've got Shavkat Rakhmonov, the Uzbekistan combat sambo master of sport, and he possesses every skill perfected that you would expect from that martial art. The former M1 Global welterweight champion, he's 16 wins and 0 losses, 8 knockouts and 8 submissions, so 100% finish rate, only been to round 3, I believe, twice before in his entire career, and, split like that, 8 knockouts, 8 submissions. He is as well-rounded visually as he is on paper, too. He can strike at distance with knockout power and bad intent. He can go up in the clinch and, elbows, knees to the body. He really does invest in the body quite a bit. He can knock you out there. On the ground with ground and pound strikes, short or long. In the mount, inside control, he can knock you out there cold. And his submission game is very slick as well. So he can really sneak in the choke, and he won't commit 100% to the squeeze unless he knows he's about to get it. So just a scary guy, and as such, he's gone 4-0 in the UFC so far. Short notice against Cowboy Alex Oliveira. That's a round 1 guillotine. Michel Prazeres, who looked like he was in 4 different weight classes than Shavkat. That was a round 2 club and sub victory. Carlston Harris was a big test. That was a fellow prospect, very powerful guy. He spinning wheel kicked Carlston Harris, then finished him off with ground and pound, knocked him out cold. So another round 1 finish there. I think his last fight against Neal Magny was his biggest test, and I think that was even a bigger test than Jeff Neal will be, honestly. The big measurables of Neal Magny, a guy who's got a lot of experience at 170 and, usually not too bad in the clinch or with the wrestling, but he spent the entirety of round 1 on his back defending. He got kicked, I think, in the stomach in round 2 and then put back on the ground and submitted by the end of round 2. So Jeff Neal, I don't know what he's really got to offer besides a puncher's chance here. Jeff Neal does have incredible power at 170. If he can get his rhythm and his timing early in a fight, he can really continue to build success as the fight goes. But if he doesn't have success early, he doesn't really do too well. He's a 15-4 professional fighter with a lot of finishes, 9 knockouts, 2 submissions. He's only been knocked out 1 time and submitted 1 time. So, and they were both pre-UFC. In the UFC, he's 7-2, only losing to Neal Magny and to Stephen Wonderboy Thompson over a 5-round striking match. So, Jeff Neal's got power in his high kick. He's got power in his combinations. We just saw him knock out Vicente Luque, very quickly, put him in trouble early in round 1, and then continued to wear him down until eventually he let loose on like 10 uppercuts in a row against the cage and knocked him out cold. So I don't see that really happening with Shavkat Rakhmonov, who's very defensively sound, very fast, elusive. And I think Jeff Neal will be a little bit gun-shy because he's going to be at risk of getting taken down from pillar to post. So I see Jeff Neal getting taken for a ride, put on his back pretty quickly, and I think subbed in this bout within 2 rounds. So a big favorite for Shavkat, but I think he's a deserving big favorite, an expected one. I think he will win here. All I've done from a betting perspective on this fight so far is I've done a chalky 2-leg parlay with Shavkat Rakhmonov parlayed with one of the women in the co-main event, and that's all I've done for a couple units so far. Otherwise, when the props drop, I'd look for Shavkat inside the distance, Shavkat by sub, the unders could be a parlay piece in this one. But, the worry is, though, is even though he's got all of these finishes on his record for Shavkat and many of them early, he's not in a rush to get the finish. Like, if Jeff Neal defends perfectly, this could go over the over-under 1.5, I think is probably where it's going to be set. This could see later rounds. Shavkat does things precisely, perfectly, and measured, never putting himself out of position. So he's not overly aggressive. It's just people have made mistakes so far. So I expect more of that. I think in most worlds this does end under 1.5, and it is Shavkat that gets the job done by submission. Okay, we've made it to the co-main event of the fight night, the first of 2 championships being defended. This is the Women's Flyweight Championship, defended by reigning defending Valentina Shevchenko. 7 title defenses, working on her 8th title defense. She's on a 9-fight winning streak, and Shevchenko is 12-2 in the UFC, only ever losing to Amanda Nunes. Alexa Grasso is the challenger from Mexico. She is 15-3 as a professional, 29 years old, so she'll be 5 years younger, about the same size as well. They're both 5'5", with about the same reach. And Alexa Grasso coming off of that 5-round decisive victory over Viviane Araujo last fall. And her boxing is really crisp, good hand speed, very good combinations, and good defense as well. And she's on a 4-fight winning streak, and I got to say, at 125, she looks a lot more comfortable than at 115 where she was initially. So she's really grown into this weight class well. She has never been stopped by strikes. She's been submitted 1 time, and she is, I believe, 10-2 in decisions. So doing very well there, minute winning on the scorecards for the judges' approval. Even still, all things considered, Valentina Shevchenko is the -600 to -650 favorite, and it's climbing. Plus 450 for Alexa Grasso as an underdog here. And unfortunately, it's like after the last fight with Shevchenko where she just narrowly won that split decision over Taila Santos. She was so close to being defeated, so close to being dethroned, and it was from the grappling. It wasn't from the striking. Shevchenko is a great kickboxer, Muay Thai champion, and she's mastered a lot of disciplines to round out her game. And she takes pride in being able to switch disciplines to exploit the weakness of her opponent. Alexa Grasso and everybody else has got to know that Shevchenko is shooting takedowns in this match as soon as she sees the opportunity to do so. And she gets better as the fight goes on, which not a lot of people can say in a 5-round fight. Shevchenko is 23-3, 8 knockouts, 7 submissions. So a dangerous fight ender, certainly more dangerous to end this fight than Grasso. And Shevchenko is just so good at counter-striking. She's going to wait for Alexa Grasso to blitz in and make mistakes. And, she'll be patient for 5 rounds if she needs to be. But I'm pretty sure that the grappling is going to be a huge difference here as well. It's going to wear on the gas tank of Alexa Grasso. And what I was saying, it is a little bit disappointing because we saw Shevchenko almost get dethroned. We saw Taila Santos as that next step of an opponent that's able to use smothering top pressure, good strength in the clinch. I think she was a lot stronger than Shevchenko thought she would be. And she, capitalized on botched takedown attempts from Shevchenko, landed on top and almost had her out of there by submission. But if it wasn't for, I think it was a headbutt or an inadvertent clash of heads that closed the eye of Santos, Shevchenko able to pour it on her in the later part of the fight when she was blinded and win that greasy split decision. Nothing of the sort is probably going to happen with Alexa Grasso, who, you're not going to outstrike Shevchenko. I don't think at 34 years old she's, that worn out yet. She's not past her prime just yet. I think she got a little bit not arrogant, but just very confident that she was used to bullying girls around in that Santos fight. And Santos ended up being the stronger bully in that matchup. So Shevchenko did not abandon the wrestling game plan, even after it had failed her in like 1 or 2 rounds. She kept going for it until the very end when she had to switch gears and start striking. So I think we saw a little bit of ego from Shevchenko. I'm sure that having that split decision narrowly go her way, watching the tape, and I think she's going to fix some of those mistakes and be even more dominant in this bout. So I don't think Alexa Grasso is going to pick up the pieces where Santos left off and dethrone Shevchenko here. I think that it's just going to be more constant success from Shevchenko, a striking clinic. That southpaw stance and the counter-strike is just so clean, so powerful. I do like the over 3.5 in this bout. I think Grasso is tough. I think she's got decent cardio and okay defense. So she might make it all the way to the scorecards here, and I think it's like minus 115 or even money for it to go over 3.5. So check out that. That would be my favorite bet on this fight. But otherwise, I have done a chalky 2-leg parlay, parlaying Shevchenko with Shavkat Rakhmonov. So that's my play on this fight. Give me Shevchenko to get her 8th title defense and still. Okay, we've made it all the way to the main event of the pay-per-view. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, and let's break into this awesome matchup for the vacant heavyweight championship of the UFC. Ciryl Gane, the former interim heavyweight champion, taking on Jon Jones, who's the greatest of all time in my opinion, and certainly the greatest 205-pound champion. Walked away from the sport for 3 years. He now returns at heavyweight, up a weight class. Very commendable stuff, but it still leaves a lot more questions than it gives us answers. But we'll try to break into it. So you've got Jon Jones, who really has never been beaten before. His one loss was to Matt Hamill from destroying him so badly they deemed it illegal with those 12-6 elbows. That was years ago. And his one no contest was actually a round 3 knockout over Daniel Cormier, and he took his belt, but of course, failed the drug test. So Jon Jones got 10 knockouts, 6 submissions. The guy is so well-rounded, 15-0 in title fights, should be 22-0 overall, an amazing unbeaten streak, and 11 official title defenses. He was the youngest champion at 23 years old, and that's hard to think about now because he's actually the older man against Ciryl Gane. He's 35 years old for Jon Jones, 3 years older than Ciryl Gane at 32. And Ciryl Gane is a French kickboxer, Muay Thai champion, and uses a lot of the same weapons that Jon Jones made popular in his day. The spinning elbows against the cage, the spinning attacks at range, switching stances, equally effective out of both, long jabs to maintain distance, and just being very patient. But Jon Jones was so much bigger than a lot of the guys at 205. He was able to stalk them and really stay flat-footed and keep that power when he wants to really throw with intent. Ciryl Gane is light on his feet. He's always bouncing around. He's going to be the faster man in this matchup. I pretty much guarantee it. And we don't know how Jon Jones is going to adapt to having extra mass on him. He might be slowed down. You don't really know. And Jon Jones, I don't really know how much he's actually going to weigh. We see Ciryl Gane weighing around 250 pounds. Not the biggest heavyweight, but not the smallest either. And Ciryl Gane has only lost one time, and that was to the man who relinquished this belt in the first place, Francis Ngannou, who he took to a 5-round decision. And, I think he shocked, Francis Ngannou shocked the world, along with Ciryl Gane, especially when he started wrestling to edge out that decision win. So, teep kicks to the body, the side kicks and the oblique kicks to the legs. Jon Jones used to do that all the time. I see Ciryl Gane doing that very effectively, but Jon Jones, the key skill that he has that Ciryl Gane has not shown us is the wrestling. Jon Jones has got good collegiate wrestling background, very good Greco-Roman wrestling as well. Against the cage, he's very strong. Again, against 205ers, against guys that he's usually much bigger than. He hasn't had so much success against guys that can match his reach and his height. Guys like Gustafsson, guys like Dominic Reyes, Thiago Santos, and even OSP. I mean, these guys were responsible for some of his more lackluster performances or close matchups in his career. I don't think it's a coincidence that these guys were all the ones that could match his height and at least rival his reach. So, there's a lot to consider here since Ciryl Gane will have the longest reach Jones has ever faced before and match his height, and he'll be the bigger man stature-wise as well. So, I'm liking the younger man here in Ciryl Gane. I'm liking the younger man, the guy who I think is the better mover. Jon Jones had a lot of his success by taking risks, using explosive movements. And Ciryl Gane is the guy who's going to force Jon Jones to do that first, because Gane will just point you from the outside. He'll jab you from both stances. He'll kick your legs. He'll do that for 15 to 25 minutes. No problem. He's done that time and time again. And I think it could be a very boring matchup we see on Saturday with, seeing flashes of the old Jon Jones in moments. But the large majority of the fight will be Ciryl Gane doing vintage Ciryl Gane things where he just stays at range and just plays the perfect, efficient fight and wins minutes. So whether or not Jon Jones will go for the wrestling and that's an effective strategy, will he do it right away or is he going to wait? Because he usually waits in his fights. He's not really taken Reyes down effectively until round 3 or round 4. A lot of his fights are that way, until he gets the worst end of the striking or he wants to mix it up to separate himself from a close judge's decision. Then he starts doing it late. Might be too late at that point if he's getting outpointed in the early part of Ciryl Gane. Then he finds out in the later rounds that, shit, man, I'm a little bit tired with all this extra weight. Shit, man, Ciryl Gane's a little bit too strong to muscle around. There's a lot of questions here. I'm just not sold that Jon Jones... I think Jon Jones reached his peak, and there's been very few fighters in UFC history that have had two primes in their career. Dan Henderson comes to mind, Vitor Belfort, Randy Couture definitely, maybe even GSP is somebody who came back after a long layoff, went up a weight class, and got the job done over Michael Bisping. A little bit different of a circumstance, but still, that's a good example of it. Just really rare. Don't get me wrong, if somebody's going to do this, it's going to be Jon Jones. He is the greatest of all time in my eyes, but if you're giving me plus money on Ciryl Gane, the younger, faster, stronger man, natural weight class, been active, I think it's Ciryl Gane in this matchup. I'm going to pick him to win by a rather, lackluster decision. I think it might be a little bit boring. We're all waiting for Jon Jones to have that awesome moment, come out of his shell, show some heavyweight power. I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't think he's going to take the risks. So give me Ciryl Gane by decision. From a betting perspective, it's very sketchy because we've got so little data on how Jon Jones is going to look here. He's got all these out of the cage antics. Well, I don't know what he's been doing, where he's been training. His original training camp he has not been at. So there's a lot of questions there. Not something I want to invest heavily in. The most I've done is some multi-event parlays, juicy multi-event parlays that are kind of chalky. I use Ciryl Gane as an underdog to boost those up. So it's Islam Makhachev, Ciryl Gane. I think Shavkat's on there. Maybe Gilbert Burns in the future as well. There's a bunch of future multi-event parlays. That's all I have is Ciryl Gane kind of in those. So maybe a unit invested at his underdog price tag. But if they give me something crazy, some crazy odds, plus 300, plus 350 on Ciryl Gane by decision, I do like this to go over, and I do like Gane to get his hand raised by judge's decision. Okay, there you have it, you guys. All the fights broken down for UFC 285. Jones versus Gane, Shevchenko versus Grasso. An amazing pay-per-view card from top to bottom. The early prelims all the way up to the main card and the main event. I haven't been this excited for a pay-per-view card in some time as a fan. As a gambler, I do like some spots as well that I've pointed out in this video. And when the props drop, I'll be looking to add some more spots later in the week. I've got you guys covered with betting content and really fun guests this week. Check out my live stream on Tuesday night with Dale from the Punch List MMA podcast, my panel with Couch Warrior, Ben Davis, Uncle Weezy, the King of Stats on Wednesday. I'll be going all over the place. I'll be on the MMA Engine with Lou Betya this week, DFS by the Numbers with Brady on Friday, I believe, and on Saturday I'll be hanging out with Before the Fights with my guys Johnny K. Picks and Blood Money MMA Bets, my guy Cody. So hit the like, hit the subscribe, check out my sportsbook betting partner BetUS. Link is in the description. You can use my promo code Addicted2Combat125 for a lot of free money to bet with on that sportsbook as a new customer. So check them out, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Cheers.